Hi, my name is Dr. Pecoraro. I'm a chiropractor in Westfield, New Jersey. Today I'm going to speak about the dark night of the soul. I'm going to assume that anyone who's watching this video was sent by God to watch it. I don't know if I even have anything to offer you with you, but I'm going to tell you about my story. Now, the dark night of the soul, never really be sure that you're in the dark night of the soul. Because if you're 100% sure, then there's a good chance that it's not even in. So I'm going to speak during this video as though I actually had the dark night of the soul, which I do believe that I did. But like I said, you can't be 100% sure. One of the reasons why I think so is because I was led before it to learn about it in great detail, and other friends of mine that I tried to get to read some of the same stuff couldn't grasp it at all. They had had conversion experiences, they were very interested in these things, but they just could not get it. And I just devoured some of this stuff, I mean, in no time at all. So anyway, I'm going to speak as though I had it, whether I had it or not. And the purpose of the video is to bring encouragement to any of you who are having the dark night of the soul. One of the hardest things for me was that I couldn't find anybody who ever had it. Nobody, all my spiritual directors, even the good ones, had never really had experience with it. And they were just kind of at a loss. And I was just felt like I was going backwards, down, 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 at the speed of light, and I was having such turmoil in my soul and in my mind because I thought I was going backwards. I was terrified. I had had a conversion experience 2 or 3 years earlier, and in that 2 or 3 year time, almost nothing could go wrong. I mean, I would pray and things would happen, but all of a sudden, I didn't want it. When I first had the conversion experience, I said to myself, I don't want to get consolation from anything but God. And at that time, I cut out anything where I could get consolation. Music I used to like to listen to, I didn't listen to anymore. Didn't watch television shows I like to watch anymore. I tried to watch EWTN all the time, the Catholic channel, the Protestant channels, read religious books, pray most of the time. I was praying 3 to 5 hours a day, and a lot of that was even on my knees. So I was trying not to get consolation from anything but God. And then all of a sudden, the consolations started from God. Those consolations started to go away. Little by little, they started to decrease more and more, until not only was I not having any consolations from God, but the more I prayed, the worse things got. And if you don't think that that's a bad feeling, let me tell you, it's devastating. Especially when there's nobody that can help you. The only solace I had during that entire time was a book called Self-Abandonment to Divine Providence by Father Jean-Pierre de Caussade. You may have heard of it. There's two books. There's one that's a smaller one about this big, and then there's another one that's about this big. I had the larger one. The smaller one tells about abandoning yourself to divine providence. But Father Caussade was a spiritual director for several convents, and if you get the larger book, it has the smaller book in it, but then the rest of it is his spiritual direction letters to the nuns of those convents. And even the spiritual directors that I had, who really didn't know anything about what I was going through, God took them away. And I understand that happens sometimes. He'll take your spiritual directors away because he wants to do it himself. So the only thing I had was this Self-Abandonment and Divine Providence book, which was helpful. I mean, I was referring to this thing 3 or 4 times a day at least, but it still did not help with the devastation. One of the strongest confirmations of you being in the dark night are that you feel abandoned by God. The fact that no matter how much you pray, no matter what you do, you keep trying to please God over and over again, more and more, and things just get worse and worse. To compare I've heard some spiritual speakers, very good ones, compare the dark night of the soul to dryness of prayer. Well, not my dark night of the soul. nowhere near the same. This would be like comparing you being thirsty at Thanksgiving dinner with somebody being thirsty who's been in the desert for 30 days with no water. It's just not the same. Nowhere near the same. Similar attributes, but it's not the same. And one of the encouraging things I want to tell you is, and I'm going to tell you this before I tell you the other stuff, which I'm going to say is bad, but it's not really bad, but it feels bad at the time. But the encouraging thing is, it's dissipated over the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm finally at the point now where I could say, yes, it was good, and if it happens again, then it'd be great. Up until now, if you had asked me, I would say it was so hard that I wouldn't want anybody to go through it. I just could not see, I couldn't feel the goodness that actually came from it. So anyway, what are some of the things that you can look forward to? Well, for one thing, it's long. I mean, the average amount of time from what I can understand is 8 years. And if for 8 years, that's how long mine was. It could be longer or shorter. Some are as short as 4 years, 3 or 4 years. Some are as long as 20 or 25 years. I think St. Teresa of Avila had 2 that were in the 20 or 25 year range. But anyway, for about 8 years, every single day, I would think to myself, things just can't get any worse. That's the one consolation that I have for the day. And every day they did get worse. For 8 years straight. It was absolutely awful. It was in the spiritual realm, it was in the physical realm, it was in every way you can possibly think of. Things got worse. In the beginning, it was more little things like hold that for a minute. I want to explain to you a little bit about why you go through the dark night. Now, my mother, when I was 17, went in for an operation. Something went wrong with the anesthesia, and she ended up being in a coma for 7 years before she died. I like to use this example because I think it's a good example. Now, before my mother went into the coma, her and my father had the usual wife-husband interactions. My wife did what a husband does. My father did what a husband does. My mother did what a wife does. So my father was actually getting something out of this. You know, she was cooking, she was talking to him, all the things that wives do. So my father in this relationship with my mother was getting something out of it. Now all of a sudden she goes into a coma. My father's getting nothing out of it. As a matter of fact, it's negative things. He's got to take care of her. She couldn't move at all. He's using his money up. He's using his time up. Not that he minded it. He didn't mind it. Let me tell you, he didn't. But what this does was before, when he was getting something out of the relationship and he loved my mother, and the difference between him now still loving her and getting nothing out of this relationship is a greater, much greater degree of love. And this is what I want, what the dark night is like. God seems to go into a coma. You're not going to get, and you seem to not get anything from him. But you have to continue to love him just like my father continued to love my mother. And by doing that, within the context of you not getting anything out of it, or seemingly not to get anything out of it, your love becomes a greater love for God. Another thing with the dark night is all the stuff that I knew about my religion and God intellectually, I started to experience all of it. So I knew it in a better way, not just in my head, but in my being. You know, I was living it, experiencing it. So this is something that is obviously good for you. Now, as I said before, you feel like you're abandoned by God, but you're really not. And someone told me something one time that reminded me of how it's similar. They said that the American Indians, when the boys were to become braves, they would blindfold them and tie them to a tree and leave them out in the woods all night alone. And of course there are wild animals out in the woods. There's bears and vultures and all kinds of things that can hurt you. But the boy had to be brave and stay there with them blinded. Now, he wasn't really by himself. He just thought he was. But there were braves all around him that he could not see protecting him. And this is what happens in the dark night. God is actually protecting you, but you just can't see it. Now, I'm going to try to explain to you the way I felt. I was telling my wife one time, I said, I feel like I'm on the top of the Empire State Building. They took the antenna off, so I'm just standing on that top thing. I don't know, 102 stories up. Right? And I'm standing on it. It's, you know, my feet can fit on it, but that's it. And I have to keep my balance. I know that if I fall, that's it. And it's dark out. I can't see anything. I can't see my feet. Can't see nothing. And the wind's blowing. And it's blowing hard. And it's blowing from every direction. And I'm terrified because I think I'm going to lose my balance and fall off the Empire State Building. I can't see anything. The wind's blowing and pushing me. I got this little bitty thing to stand on. And God's saying to me, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Now, can you imagine being in that position in real life? That's what it felt like. You know, like complete abandonment. You know, you're terrified. You don't know what the heck is going to happen next. And you can't get out of it. Even when I had spiritual direction or people say some things to me that made me feel better, the longest it ever lasted was 20 minutes. I remember this one time I went to this spiritual director who had, his dark night was completely different from mine. It didn't really help at all, but it helped a little bit. I shouldn't say it didn't help at all. But for about 20 minutes on my way home, I felt really good. And after 20 minutes, I was back to exactly the way it had been. Because if you feel too good, then it's not the dark night. So, be prepared for that, but know that it's good for you in some way. Keep on praying, keep on doing the things that you know are right for God, and what comes, comes, and what doesn't, doesn't. Things can go bad in every realm, the physical realm, the spiritual realm. In the physical realm, in the beginning it was easy. It just was things like I couldn't kneel anymore because my back was bothering me. So now I'm in church not being able to kneel down. Before that, you know, of course, judging people who aren't kneeling down during Mass. And now I can't do it. Things happened at work, so I had to get to Mass late, had to leave early. Before that, I might have been judging people who couldn't do, who came in late and left early. Now I had to do it. There's no way of getting around it. These were the easy things in the beginning. As time went on, my wife, who didn't even realize she was doing this, started to treat me like I treated her. If you don't think that's bad. I mean, I didn't realize what a jerk I was until this happened. And she didn't even know she was doing it. She thought she was just the same as she always was. But I recognized it. I didn't like the way she was treating me, and I thought to myself, this is exactly what I do to her all the time. I deserved it, really, but I got the experience of seeing what it was like to be treated by me, which was not nice. I didn't like it at all, let me tell you. I remember, I also read one time that other people will not be able to see it. They will look at you and they will not even see any holiness in you at all. And their attitude will be something like, what kind of saint is this? He's supposed to be a holy guy, look what he's doing. But don't worry about it, because that's normal. When it was happening to me, one of the things that happened was, in my office, I put these little crucifixes. They're maybe 6 inches tall, 4 inches tall, something like that, in each of the treatment rooms of my office. I figured this is no different than a Catholic hospital. That was it. That was the only thing I did. My wife and her best friend, 2 of the most religious people I know, very conservative Catholics, tore into me, screaming at me for doing this, telling me that I was pushing religion onto the patients. Nobody was going to come into the office. What was the matter with me doing this? And I was like really surprised that anybody would say anything, let alone these 2 people were the 2 I least expected to say anything like that. But that's what happened. There were just so many things like this. But remember, the purpose of this video is to encourage you to continue to love God, continue to pray, continue to do the right things, continue to try to keep the commandments, and no matter how bad it looks, someday you'll see light at the end of the tunnel. Remember, the average amount of time is 8 years. That's how long mine was. So don't be concerned if it takes at least that long. And like I also said before, some people have it for 20 or 25 years. Mother Teresa had a dark night where they say that she wasn't sure about what was going on. This is similar to some of the stuff that I had, although that is the stuff that I would think would be the easiest out of mine. If you can think of the worst thing that you could possibly think of happening to you, be prepared for that to maybe happen. God will get you through it, but it will not be fun while it's happening. It can't be. You have to suffer. It's part of the plan. But it'll be over sometime, and you'll be better for it. I'm at a loss for words now, which I kind of was afraid that would happen, but I guess God's telling me that this is where the video should end. So I'm going to end it here for now. If I think of something at another time, I'll make another Dark Night video. So I hope I've encouraged some of you who needed encouragement, and I'll pray for all of you.